What is the role of religion in our ever-changing world? From the NewsChannel 5 network, this is Issues of Faith.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Issues of Faith. Glad you're with us today. We are talking about ministering to women in prison. It can be a difficult and sometimes thankless job, but there are many rewards. And we are happy to have with us Tina Hutchison. She is choir director at the Tennessee Prison for Women, also the founder of Holding Out Hope, a nonprofit. Yes. We'll talk about what that is. But I was fascinated by this story. A choir director inside the Tennessee Women for Prison. So tell me, what do you all do? How does this work?
You know, we have the fun of getting to perform every single month. We work on songs for religious services. We also sing for dignitaries and different people who come in through the Department of Correction. And so every Christmas, we even write our own show, produce it, build a set in 8 hours, and perform. And so what it is basically music therapy inside the prison, which is an amazing thing to be a part of.
What do you gain from it? And what do you think we could all have a better understanding of, seeing what it is you see on a weekly basis?
Well, I grew up in the church. My father was a minister, but I had a very much a sense, because he was so conservative, that there was a them and a me, us and them, you know. There was such a division, and 14 years I've been doing this. And so when I walked in that very first week in 2004, I genuinely thought I was the person going in to give them what they needed, to give them the truth they needed, the growth that they needed. And what I've learned is they were my greatest teachers. I really did pull myself up to a desk and sit down and get schooled about what it is to love, what it is to believe in people, what it is to be tenacious about emotional and personal growth. This is a mission field, if you will, for the sake of this show. That's the perfect analogy. It's a mission field of people who have gone through some of the most difficult things in life. And yes, there's a place for prison, absolutely, in our society. 2.5 million people are incarcerated in this country. But there's also so much of a place for love to intersect those moments where someone is doing time and they need to think, and they need to get very serious about who they are and who they want to be, because 90% of everyone who's incarcerated will return as citizens. They will be our neighbors. They will be shoulder to shoulder with us in our neighborhoods, and I'm tenacious about making sure they return with a sense, the girls that I get to love, with a sense of what love is.
So many will return back out into the world, but they're there and they're kind of forgotten about.
Right.
And do you see that, and do you see the impact of that, and does that concern you? You know, what do you see once they're in there, as far as, I mean, you said you went in thinking it was us and them and that kind of thing, and you have this whole other world that's been opened up to you. What have you seen having gone in and this new understanding?
Well, I think that when I went in, I really did see a difference between them and me, and very quickly I understood that we are all the same. And I think love is a very eye-to-eye experience, whereas judgment takes an aerial view. It positions itself higher so that it can basically assess the value or lack of value of another person. So for me, love is an eye-to-eye experience. And so when I go into a community of women who many, and I would say almost all, don't truly know what it is to identify and love themselves, it's easy sometimes for a woman to identify that which is greater than them, God, could love them, but that they are worthy of even forgiving and loving themselves is there's a great chasm, a disconnect. And so when I walk in, it's very important for me to never see them as a number, to see them as my sister, like a daughter, a grandmother, a mother, and to walk in with an eye-to-eye view. It allows me to be teachable and moldable by them, and it allows me to gain their respect instantly, because love has a reputation at the end of the day, and I get to carry that after 14 years. Women know that I will unconditionally love them no matter what their crime is or how long they're going to spend at the Department of Correction.
So how does it work? You go in, how many women are there, and you know, how often do you meet? I guess once a week. Mm-hmm. But how does it work? And how do new people come in and that kind of thing?
Well, prison is very transitory, so many times women are coming through, they're being reclassified to different facilities, but on average we have about 40 women who participate in our program, sometimes up to 70. sometimes as few as 20. But they just put in a chapel request and then they join the choir. Many girls love to sing. Maybe they had experiences in a church singing before. But what's amazing is you have all these different walks of life merge into our choir room. And we don't just do music. I also teach life lessons, coping skills, relationship skills, how to handle yourself, how to grow, how to train your mind to think beyond just this moment right now. How can you be empowered as a woman to make decisions out of self-love instead of victimization? And so we spend 2 hours together. Sometimes we dance, we sing, we laugh, we cry. It's just a community where I set a tone that there's no judgment in the room, that no matter if you're in opposing gangs or you would have never sat with anybody on the street, and sometimes the church can take a real lesson from that, that there is a togetherness that you can create in a space, and it's a very safe space, and that's, women will say they live for Tuesdays.
They live for Tuesdays. Mm-hmm. Was this your idea? Is this done in other prisons? Is it unique to women?
Well,
what about all that?
This was definitely something that had happened at Tennessee Prison for Women before, but a lot of times the community can get, let's say it's a little rough and tumble sometimes to be a choir director in there. And so they'd had a couple people leave within a very short period of time. But I determined I would not be one of those. I'm kind of a lot of chutzpah for a little person. But so I go in there and just lead, and I hold the ship pretty tight with the way that the girls behave. But yeah, I'm sure there are other choirs. I'm certain that they are here and there across the United States. I wish we could duplicate this program, because what I understand is music is a healer by its nature. It is a universal language as well. So we call ourselves the soundtrack to the best day and the worst day at the Tennessee Prison for Women. And it's a privilege to just sing and lift our voices. It's therapy, it's healing.
The best day and the worst day. What are some of the stories that mean the most to you in the course of time you've been doing this? Who are some of the people you've met, and what kind of stands out to you?
One of my favorite stories is years ago, they would allow you to bring food in at one time. So we could bring in summer sausage and a variety of kind of appetizers that are prepackaged. And we brought them in, and we had a princess party with a bunch of girls who are, incarcerated, and they walked down, and we had a crown for everyone. We had pink streamers in the room. Now you imagine a prison surrounded by razor wire, and everybody's wearing a crown with glitter on it. I mean, it was one of the most epic. I will never forget it as long as I live. And what I watched after we did that, and we just talked about their worth, they walked back to their pods up the hill with their shoulders back. Some still 10 years later have those crowns and wear them on their birthdays. It's an amazing thing. When you are able to love people, you can see the effect of it. It changes a life. Just a couple weeks ago, there was a girl who had been just through so much, going through so many things, and she ended up just right at my knee weeping while I was singing, just because she knew that she was loved and could come back and not be judged for the decisions she'd been making. And that's the power, and I see that week after week, lives that are transformed simply because somebody believed they were worth something and that they were powerful to make life-changing decisions themselves.
Do you think there's enough outreach into the prisons? I mean, this is an area, you called it a mission field, and it's an area that in the Bible it says we should care about our prisoners.
Yes.
It's a reflection on us as a society, but I think so often we don't think about that group of people. What do you think about that? Are churches doing enough? Could they do more? Is it not appropriate for churches to maybe do more? What would you advise if a church out there wants to do something? What do they do?
Well, I would say contact the Department of Correction, first of all, because there's a program, an initiative called Take One, and it really encourages nonprofits and churches of faith to take one inmate who is a returning citizen, and mentor them for a year. I think it's a revolutionary concept and idea. Just one person who's returning, and help their family, help them find jobs, clothing. Yes, we can do more, of course. There's such need, but we are really blessed at the Tennessee Prison for Women. This state is very great about volunteerism, and we have over 250 active volunteers at my facility alone, which is a beautiful thing. We need more of that because, the department's taxed with not being able to have enough educators, and it's very difficult. So we kind of come in as support to help with what needs to happen in the rehabilitation of an inmate, of a woman, of a man who's incarcerated.
And so if you were going to talk to someone who's all gung-ho, and they don't have all the experience you have, and they say, I'm going to go and I'm going to do this and I'm going to change lives, you know, what would you tell them? I'm sure you would say great.
Go.
Go.
Because,
what I guess would be the biggest misconceptions people have, and just kind of get that person ready for what they're about to experience?
You know, I laugh because I walked in as a goody two-shoes. I mean, my background was so squeaky clean, and I wasn't at all prepared for what in the world was going to change my life. And so I say that if the passion for you burns inside you to serve, then you need to listen to that and go and trust that God himself equips you in the middle of the service. I think sometimes people can be very fearful because obviously it's a community of people who've made decisions, and many of those decisions were very dangerous. I feel very safe inside the walls. I think they've really equipped all the officers to keep me safe, but I feel the girls will keep me safe. So I think when you bump up against fear in any place of service, you need to push through that if you feel called to do it, and do it. We are going to change the world. I don't say that lightly. We have a tenacious group of women who have been believing for something incredible, for a light to shine on what we do, because we're convinced that sometimes out here in the free world, we don't get love right. We often are combative and hard on each other and not filled with grace. But if we inside a prison can create community where love drives it, I mean, we want people to see what we do. We want them to be inspired by the power of love, as simple and as cliche as that sounds. But
and
it's
is
true.
that what you have? Is that, so you have these 40 to 70 women, and do you feel that you have that kind of a community?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the love in the room is palpable. It's felt. Just like fear in a room can be felt, so can love. And when love is present, it infuses every woman with hope. The hope they can think differently, be different, grow. I would not be the woman I am today if had they not taught me how to grow up. I mean, I had women chastise me about I was too soft, too lenient. They had to grow a backbone in me, transform how I thought about myself. I wouldn't be creating the things I'm creating and the work I'm doing if it wasn't for them.
Was there a moment where you thought about walking away? Was there a moment early on where you were like, this is ridiculous, and I don't know, I may be out of here?
Yeah, the moment I thought about walking away, I was about 6 months in, and I learned, I had never checked on what any of my girls had done, and I learned one of the crimes that one of the women had committed, and it broke me in a way I can't even describe. And I came into service that night after reading it on the internet. The internet is not always our friend. And she was the woman asked to pray that night. And I thought, how dare she pray? She has no right to pray, because I'm human. I mean, judgment can live in me very quickly and easily. And what I heard was, God, thank you for second chances. Thank you for new life. Thank you for the opportunity to begin again. And God reminded me of who I am as a person, the flaws that I carry and the things in my own journey. And it reduced me to humility and to understand that we're all equal. And that was a moment, and that was a turning point for me, and I never looked back. I don't look at what they've done. I don't think about those things. I often watch the news and wonder who will be my new friend. Who do I get to love? Who is a new person I can hold and tell her she's valuable?
So would you prefer not to know what they're in there for?
Well, I think in the beginning I didn't want to know. Now I'm okay, no matter what it is. I understand deeply that we are not defined by our worst day, though we are often punished for it, sometimes for life. But we are not defined by it. If I lived with the thought that no one was rehabilitatable, if I lived with that thought that no one could become something different, I would not be doing what I do. I believe it for myself, I believe it for my own children, I believe it for every girl I get to serve inside the walls.
So you have founded Holding Out Hope. That's a nonprofit that
Yes.
helps with all this. So we're going to take a break, and then I want to come back and talk about that. What is Holding Out Hope, and how do you help? We'll take a break. Be back right after this.